You might remember this formula from grade 11. This is the compound interest formula. So it's written here. I tell you what the values mean. Before we get into this lesson, let's see if you can remember how to use this compound interest formula to answer this question. If Bob deposited $275 in an account that earned 2.7% annual interest compounded monthly, how much will he have after 6 years? So you might have to really think back to when you did math in grade 11 to see if you can remember how to do this. So pause the video, attempt the question, and then check back in here to see how you do. So hopefully you at least remembered a little bit about this. So he deposited $275. That's the present value. That's the value at the beginning of the deposit. How much will he have? That's the future value. That's what it's going to be at the end of the investment. So we're trying to figure out A. We know what P is. All right, 2.7% annual interest. Well, 2.7% is 0.027, but it's compounded monthly. So you got to divide the annual interest by 12 to get the monthly interest. And then how much will he have after 6 years? Well, yeah, it's 6 years, but N is the number of compounding periods, not the number of years. So if there's compounded monthly, that's 12 times a year for 6 years. So that's 6 times 12, which is 72. Okay, so we know what all our values are. You plug that into the equation. You just type that into your calculator, and you should get that answer. $323.30. That's how much you'll have after 6 years. And this leads into our lesson for now, which is applications for exponential functions. So you might not have really thought about it, but that compound interest formula is an exponential function. So our goal is to extend your knowledge of solving exponential equations to real-world situations like financial math. And also reflect on the reasonableness of your answer. So anytime you work through application problems, you should be thinking about, is your answer reasonable? If it's not reasonable, you probably did something wrong. And it's a good skill to have to be able to check your work in that way. So I'm going to work through a few different examples of different types of applications of these exponential functions. But in general, you're always going to have to come up with an equation to model a situation and then use your equation to solve a problem. Okay, so because you need to come up with an equation, it always follows this format in general. F of x is just whatever the name of your function is. Now, you're going to name it after what your final amount's going to be. So in the warm-up, we talked about the compound interest formula. We had A equals. So A was the future value of the money, the final amount of money that's going to be in that account after a certain amount of time. Now, your equation is always going to follow the format A times B to the exponent x. A is your initial amount, the starting value. B is your rate of growth or rate of decay if it's decreasing over time. And x is going to be whatever your independent variable is. In the warm-up question, your independent variable was the number of compounding periods. It's usually some form of time in a lot of these applications, but it doesn't have to be time. It's just whatever your independent variable is. Okay, so this is the format that our equations are always going to follow, whether it be financial math or population growth, population math, anything like that. Or we'll do an example with the half-life of a chemical element. It always follows this same format. So burn this into your memory. Initial amount is the coefficient. The base of the power is your rate of growth or rate of decay. And The exponent is your independent variable. Okay, so my very first example deals with financial math, just like in the warm-up. Bob has decided to invest $5,000 in an account that earns 8% per year compounded quarterly. So there's that compound interest again. Write an equation to model Bob's investment. Okay, so I gave you the compound interest formula in the warm-up that you would have learned in grade 11. But let's say you don't remember the compound interest formula, but you remember the general form for any exponential function. F of x equals a b to the exponent x. Well, we can use this to answer this question too. We'll end up with the compound interest formula, but I just want to show you how you can build the equation from scratch. So let's go back to the question. Bob has decided to invest $5,000. Okay, so if he invests $5,000, that means he's starting with that much money. That's your initial value. Now, the other piece of information that I'm given is it earns 8% per year compounded quarterly. That refers to a growth rate. Now, if you look at 8%, you would write that as 0.08, okay? But that's not the growth rate. Notice this, it's compounded quarterly. So if it's 8% per year, what percent is it per quarter? Well, we got to divide that by 4. So we have 0.08 divided by 4, which is 0.02. So really, each quarter, the amount of money is growing by 2%. But that's not our growth rate. If we wrote 0.02, that simply means every quarter it's 2% of what it was the previous quarter, which means you're going to get a decreasing amount. But we're growing. So think of it this way. Each quarter, you have 100% of what you had the previous quarter plus another 2%. So my growth rate, this value of b right here, is going to be 1.02 or 1 plus 0.02. Now this exponent of x, that's my independent variable. Well, my growth rate is how much it's growing per quarter. So my independent variable needs to be the number of quarters. Okay, so x is going to be the number of years the account is in use multiplied by 4, because there's 4 quarters for each year that it's in use. So let's start with an equation. I'm going to use a capital A to represent the final amount of money that the investment is worth. Okay, so instead of writing f of x, I'm going to write capital A. All right, my initial value was $5,000. My growth rate was 1.02. And my independent variable was the number of years multiplied by 4. So I'm going to use t to represent the time in years. So my equation ends up being a equals 5,000 times 1.02 to the exponent 4t. And you can see this looks really similar to the compound interest formula I gave you in the warm-up, but we built this one ourselves. All right, part B. How much will his investment be worth in 10 years? So the question is asking us, how much will his investment be worth? That's solving for A. In 10 years, that's telling us what T is. So we can use the equation we built in part A, substitute T equals 10, and solve. And just a note about communication. Anytime you're dealing with money, put the dollar sign at the beginning and always round to 2 decimal places for the rounding to the nearest penny. How long will it take Bob's investment to triple? This is a different kind of question than you've ever been asked about compound interest. Because this time we're asked how long will it take? Well, that deals with the exponent. We're solving for the exponent. Maybe in grade 11 you did questions like this, but you would have just solved by guess and check. Here we don't have to guess anymore. We have ways of solving exponential equations. Okay, so if the investment is tripling, well, it started at $5,000. Triple that would be $15,000. So I can say that my final amount is going to be $15,000 if I'm starting with $5,000. That's tripling. I don't know what t is, though. That's what I'm trying to figure out. How long will it take? So I'm going to solve for t. So I have an equation. I can do the algebra here. Divide both sides by 5,000. And now I have a simpler equation, but I can't really make these have a common base. So I'm going to have to solve by graphing. So I'm going to graph y equals 3 and y equals 1.02 to the exponent 4t in Desmos. And I find my point of intersection, which tells me what t is equal to. So I can say it will take Bob's investment 13.87 years to triple. Okay, so now we have another example that's not compound interest. This one deals with population growth. So Roberta has an ant farm. She started the colony with 25 ants, and the population has grown 18% each year. Write an equation to model the ant population. Okay, so we're going to start with our general format, f of x equals a b to the x. Well, I'm going to, instead of using f of x, I'm just going to use the symbol p for population. Okay, now a, that's my initial value. It says she started with 25 ants. So I'm going to start with 25. Now I need my growth rate. Well, it's growing 18% each year. Well, 18% is 0.18, but remember, that's not my growth rate. So each year it's going to be 100% of what the population was last year plus another 18%. So it's going to be 1 plus 0.18 or 1.18. So if it's growing by 18%, that means your growth rate is 1.18. And now the exponent. What's my independent variable? Well, it's growing 18% each year. So that's just going to be the number of years. I'll just say n for number of years. Okay, so now I have an equation. Next question. How many ants will there be in 5 years? So I'm told n is 5. And I want to know how many ants there will be, so I want to figure out what p is. So I have my equation, and I substitute n equals 5, and then I can plug that into my calculator. So when I do that, I get an answer rounded to approximately 57.2. Now, since I'm dealing with number of ants, I'm not going to have 57.2 ants. That doesn't make any sense. So I need to round this to a whole number. So I'll say there will be about 57 ants in 5 years. Okay, next question. How long will it take for Roberta to have 1,000 ants? So this time, I know the population is 1,000, so P is 1,000. How long will it take? I don't know what n is. So this time I need to solve for n. Okay, so I've got an equation. Let's divide both sides by 25 to simplify. And I end up with 40 equals 1.18 to the exponent n. Now, I can't seem to get these as powers of the same base easily, so I'm going to solve by graphing. We'll solve it with the same method as before. We're going to graph y equals 40 and y equals 1.18 to the exponent n. We'll find the point of intersection, and then that will tell us the value of n. So once I graph those, I get the point of intersection as this, according to Desmos, which tells me that my independent variable is 22.287. N is 22.287. So I'm just going to say it's about 22 years for her to have 1,000 ants. This is my last example, and it's very similar to the last two. Brian has borrowed 150 grams of radioactive material from a nearby nuclear facility. The material has a half-life of 80 days. if you have taken a chemistry course, or perhaps physics, or some kind of science, and you've talked about half-life, then you'll know what that means. You might need a refresher. So, the basic definition of half-life is the amount of time it takes to have half of the material. So, a radioactive material decays. So, he's going to start with 150 grams. After 80 days, it will have decayed to half the amount. Another 80 days, he'll have half of that amount. After another 80 days, he'll have half of that amount. Okay, so that's what half-life is. So we're going to build an equation, and we're going to solve some problems dealing with that. Okay, so he's got 150 grams of this material to start with. So since we're talking about amount of material, let's just say, I don't know, M for mass of material. The mass of the material. Remember, we start with the initial value. Starts with 150 grams. Now, the growth or decay rate. Well, in this case, it's decaying because we're talking about a half-life. Remember, radioactive material decays. You're going to have less and less of it. Okay, so I said half-life is the amount of time it takes to have half of the material. So every 80 days, you're going to have 50% of the amount you had in the previous 80 days. All right, now what's my independent variable? What's the exponent? Well, we need to factor in this 80 days somehow. Okay, so our exponent's actually going to be, let's just say n is the number of days divided by 80. All right, that's how a half-life works. So, for example, if n was 80, this fraction would be 80 over 80 would be 1. So you're multiplying 150 by 0.5 to the exponent 1. You're going to get half of the material. If it's only been 1 day, you're not going to get the full 50% decay. It's going to be less than that, okay? So that's why there's a fraction in here. And the bottom of the fraction, if you're dealing with a half-life, is just the half-life itself. So we've got an equation. Initial value, decay rate, and our independent variable. How much material will be left in 120 days? Easy. N is 120. Plug it into your equation. Use your calculator. And you get your answer. Now, if you tried this and you didn't get the right answer, most likely your error was in the exponent, not putting brackets around it in your calculator. That might mess you up. Okay, so last question. How long will it take for there to be only 1 gram remaining? Okay, so now we know what the mass is, so m is 1. How long will it take? We're solving for n. So I can substitute m equals 1 into my equation. I can graph y equals 1 and y equals 150 times 0.5 to the exponent n over 80 into Desmos. When I did it, I got this point of intersection between those two graphs, which tells me it will take 578 days for there to be only 1 gram remaining. And probably Brian will be dead by then because of the radiation. Now it's your turn to practice, so just remember, we're always following the general format f of x equals a times b to the x. So you've got your initial value, your growth rate or your decay rate, and then whatever your independent variable is, usually a measure of time. So you've got lots of practice questions to work on. If you get stuck, just let me know, reach out, and I'll do my best to help.